Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Studio Series 86 Leader Class Coronation Starscream. Now I think it's pretty safe to say that when this guy was announced, the majority of us, myself included, were actually rather underwhelmed as to what this turned out to be. I at the very best was expecting a complete brand new Leader Class sculpt for this guy, or at the very least a really modified version of Earthrise Starscream, but nope, as it stands we kind of got neither and essentially just got a repack of a 2-year-old Earthrise Starscream with brand new hands and a few bonus accessories which, truth be told, could have been packaged in a very similar way to some of the accessories that we saw in the Centurion drone pack. And considering Coronation Starscream is really only on screen for roughly about 30 seconds, I really can't see this appealing to everyone like the likes of the Leader Class Grimlock and of course Slug did. But nevertheless, I'll talk you through all of my pros and cons during this review. Let's take a look firstly at the base Starscream figure himself. Now I won't go into too much detail in regards to this, as mentioned beforehand, it is the same as Earthrise Starscream. They have however decided to go with a little more of a darker colour scheme in regards to some of the paint apps. Most noticeably would be the silver used there for the mouth. It's more gunmetal when in comparison to the lighter shade of silver, and you can see here for the torso once again the red is in fact slightly muted. It's nowhere near as glossy, which personally I am not a really big fan of. I do wish this was slightly more vibrant. Of course in the actual animation all of the characters really did pop, so it would have been nice to have seen this completely glossed, but nevertheless the sculpt work is still pretty decent, as so is the gunmetal there for the intakes, and you can see the face sculpt isn't too bad at all. We've got some pretty decent detailing there on the side of the head. As we turn our attention to the actual forearms and the biceps, you can see the sculpt work is really nicely done, as so is here for the null rays. The same can also be applied here for the wings, and then as we just spin our attention down to the lower section once more, some pretty decent paint as well as sculpt, and the same can also be applied here to the lower section of the legs, the shins as well as the feet. Now some of the differences would be the fact that here for these rear wings we now no longer in fact actually see the red and white stripes. This is in fact based on animation accuracy instead of toy accuracy, so this is actually a welcomed addition. You can see just completely cast out of blue, and of course we now have got fully articulated fingers. Now this is something that I'm really hoping we can in fact see going forwards for all Transformers from the main line, as I really think articulated fingers are awesome, and they definitely do help in not only getting the figures in more natural poses, but also in fact actually making them look slightly cooler in terms of photography. You can see here the sculpt work is really nicely done there for those fingers, and of course you can in fact actually open the palm or collapse it to create a rather unusual looking fist, but to be fair that doesn't look too bad, and the way they've sculpted it you can in fact still actually insert some of the 5mm posts and it won't in fact actually obstruct the grip at all, which is really awesome. But then as we turn our attention to the back, we still sadly have got that really ugly nose cone, which if they decided to do a brand new mold, I'm almost certain Hasbro and Takara could have found a way to have in fact actually abolished this. Now in regards to articulation, it is exactly the same as the previous version, so I'll very quickly go through this. We get a ball joint at the head, which can look up and down, tilt side to side, as well as rotate left to right. The arms can hinge out to the sides, full 360 there. We can also rotate here at the bicep, 90-degree bend there at the elbow. Of course the fingers can open and close, but sadly we still don't in fact actually get a wrist rotation nor a waist rotation. Considering this is now a leader figure, I really do wish they could have in fact actually tweaked the tooling, but nevertheless the skirt can hinge out of the way to accommodate the legs kicking forwards that far, back that far, out to the sides, rotation at the thigh, 90-degree bend there at the knee, and of course finally a pivot here at the actual foot, which is really cool. And then as we very quickly turn here to a comparison between the Coronation Studio Series Starscream and the original Earthrise version, you can see the changes are really difficult to in fact actually spot, but once again, much like I mentioned previously, the paint is in fact a little more vibrant here on this Earthrise release when in comparison to this version, especially where the face is concerned. So once again, I do kind of wish they'd used the lighter shade of silver for this guy, but you can see the stark difference there in terms of the hands. These look so much better, and to be fair, the colour of cast plastic also on the new Studio Series version is better, but I do think the paint is slightly better in terms of vibrancy on this guy. And then as we just spin our attention down to the lower section, you can see he's missing some grey paint apps, of course, to aid animation accuracy, and then here to the side, once again, we're missing the red and white stripes. So really and truly, truth be told, if you already own this version and you're not all that keen on the entire Coronation getup, then honestly just stick with this, as the changes are definitely not worth paying the additional $30 to just get the throne, the cape, of course the shoulders and the crown. But talking of the Coronation gear, let's actually take a look at some of the accessories that this figure comes with. Now granted, the accessories are actually really well done, especially where this Decepticon throne is concerned. We haven't, I don't believe, ever seen a sort of prop included with a mainline Transformer ever, so to in fact actually get this completely cast out of solid plastic is awesome. And if this is something they plan to do for future releases, then I'm definitely all here for it, as I think this has turned out for the most part really nicely. Now this is inspired by the throne that we see on the Decepticon ship known as the Nemesis, so we've got a really nice Decepticon insignia slap bang there in the center. I love the sculpt work here at the top, as well as for the actual chair piece itself, and you can see here for the side some really nice sculpt work, especially going down to this base region, and it's been sculpted all the way around as well, so even here from a side perspective it's really nice. But then sadly, as we turn our attention to the back, it is rather rather hollowed out, although they have tried their best to in fact actually sculpt some detailing so that it doesn't look too bad. And to be fair, it is in fact hollowed so that we can store some of these accessories in, which I'll showcase in just a second. But definitely a really cool accessory, and I'll be sure to showcase some images at the beginning of this review of how a couple of different figures look in this. And then we do in fact also get included the crown that Starscream of course wears in the movie, the only thing that actually survives the blast by Galvatron before of course he treads on it and absolutely disintegrates it. You can see the paintwork for the most part is pretty nice. There is sadly a little bit of scratching there at the tip, but nevertheless it's been painted in this nice gold with some very nice red paint detailings. And then of course we do get included a brand new pair of null rays. These are slightly modified of course to in fact actually attach onto the shoulder pads, which are a welcome addition. These this time have been painted and look really cool. The paint is in fact actually fairly similar to what we've seen from the Masterpiece figure. And then of course we do get included two shoulder pads which have got some nice sculpt work going on as well as paintwork, so these look really cool. And then finally we get one of the coolest Coronation accessories in my opinion, that being the cape. Now this is very well done, especially in terms of its functionality. It really does remind me of what we are expected to see with the upcoming Coronation gear that is supposed to come with those MP Seekers. Whether or not that will in fact actually surface is yet to be seen, but here for the Studio Series version it's actually pretty cool. So without further ado, let's in fact actually deck out our Studio Series Starscream with some of the Coronation get-up. So to begin with, you're going to want to in fact remove these null rays and just set them off to the side. And just to show you a comparison between these, you can see it's essentially just the tip that they've basically sliced off so that it doesn't compromise articulation, which is pretty decent. So we'll take this shoulder pad here, just take the null ray, wedge that in there like so, and then take this, snap that there into the shoulder, collapse that section down, of course come to this side, and of course repeat the same process. So snap that in there, and then peg this there onto the side of the arm. Now it's really up to your own personal preference how you do decide to flare these out. Personally, I really like to hinge them up like so. It creates a very dynamic look, and of course Starscream's an incredibly dramatic character. It would stand to reason that he would want these flared out, causing as much drama as possible. We can then take the crown, and this essentially does just peg over the top of the head, a really nice and snug fit. And then finally turn your attention here to the back, lift this awful nose cone up, which will expose a port that we can just take this peg, snap that there into place, and behold, here we have Coronation King Starscream fully decked out and actually not looking too bad. But once again, is this guy really worth the leader price point, especially if you've already got the Earthrise Voyager? And honestly, he really only appears on screen like this for about 30 seconds before he is vaporized by Galvatron. So unless you're a die-hard completionist of the Studio Series line, or of course you never picked up the original Starscream, then I can't see this appealing as much as some of the other Studio Series figures. But just bringing this in here for a closer look, you can see the Coronation get-up really does look pretty awesome. And just to show how these shoulder pads don't hinder articulation, you can hinge the null ray out on its own independent hinge joint, and the actual shoulder pad is on its own joint as well, so that's really cool. And then we can just take the actual shoulder joint of the robot mode, hinge that up, and you can see that does not compromise at all. So you can in fact create the "Who disrupts my coronation?" And in order to add further exaggeration to that, you can in fact take the hinge joint here at the cape and in fact flare that out, which is just so awesome. Of course will create for some very dynamic poses, and once again Starscream's just so dramatic. It's just so cool that we can in fact actually do this for this guy. So with all that being said, I think he looks pretty cool here with the Coronation get-up. But once more, is this a look that is really going to appeal to the vast majority of collectors? I'm not entirely sure that it is. And just for a very quick comparison, of course, here we've got the throne chair there. Now, in order to showcase how a few of the accessories actually attach onto this for when you actually get this guy transformed into a jet, you are going to want to take the crown here, and as we spin our attention to the back, this will peg into this slot. So just snap that there into place. We can then take these shoulder pads here, wriggle those off, and of course wriggle this one off as well. They are in fact held in very securely, which of course is awesome to see. Now with these, if you do decide to leave the actual null rays that Starscream comes with standard on in bot mode, then you can in fact actually take these and detach them and peg them onto the back. Although if you want all of the accessories stored on this, I'd recommend leaving them attached, as this peg here is in fact going to tab into a slot on the underside. Now this is in fact easier said than done in order to actually get that wedged in there, but you do just clip that in there, and that is how that stores. Of course, come to this side and repeat the same process. So snap that section into place, and then finally we'll just take the cape here, and you guys guessed it, that will peg into this port. But as mentioned beforehand, if you wish to store all of the null rays, these two can also peg into these ports and then the cape will just come over the top and will in some ways actually conceal some of those accessories. And I do like how the cape can kind of be seen from the back of this. Of course, if you've got all of the coronation gear on Starscream and you wish to have him seated, you can't have him seated with the cape. So the fact that you can kind of see it from behind is pretty cool. It gives you the illusion that he's still wearing it, and just to showcase how Starscream actually looks whilst on the throne, something that he never did. You can see there, definitely a pretty cool looking prop, and you can put Galvatron, Megatron, any of the Decepticons on this if you really wanted to. Once again, it is something that I hope that we can see going forward. Now, very quickly turning to transformation, for those of you who have perhaps never seen this guy transform to begin with, you are going to want to center the head, take the nose cone, lift this up and over, and just tab that there into place. We can then turn our attention here to these arms, take these sections, pull those forwards, and in fact actually dip this in, take this wrist, fold this up, and push that section through until that does clip there into place. We can then collapse this back over, collapse the hand in, and just fold that up like so. Come to this side and repeat the same process. So hinge this section forwards, tuck that in, lift the wrist up, and just snap that in there, collapse that over the top, and just snap that there into place. We can then come here to the top. I personally like to take these intakes and apply a little bit of pressure just so that it's easy to in fact actually remove this. Once again, it's sad to see that they didn't in fact actually modify this to make this slightly more enjoyable during transformation, but nevertheless, separate that, take the nose cone, rotate this section around, and just flip this here to the back until it snaps into place. We can then take these arms here, tuck them into the middle, then just take this section, launch this over the top, clip that there into place. You're going to want to take this skirt region, lift this forwards. We are then going to want to take this, snap that into place, snap that section into place, collapse the toes, and then come here to the front, disengage this, and in fact actually tab these two halves together, and then we can just launch this backwards, and you can see these two tabs will in fact peg there into those slots. So snap them in there, collapse these along the back like so, collapse this panel down. We can then flare out these back wings, and once again, it's sad to see that these are in fact just as loose and prone to falling off as the original version. So it would have been cool if they could have created an extendable joint where you could have shifted this outwards, then rotated around, but nevertheless, you are just going to want to snap that into place, snap that into place, and then for some finishing touches, we can take the null rays and peg them here on to the wings, and there we have our Studio Series 86 Leader Class Coronation Starscream fully transformed up into the jet mode, and once again, honestly, not all that different from his original Earthrise counterpart. The sculpt work is as ever just as good, so we've got some really nice internal cockpit detailing there, covered with this very nice orange transparent plastic. You can see some very nice red paintwork here towards the front. I do like the red and white striping that we've got going on for the wings, as well as the Decepticon insignias, and it is nice to see that they did in fact actually scrap the white and red striping that we had here originally in order to create for a slightly more animation accurate look. And they did also add these grey / gunmetal detailings here to the centre, which once again are just a nice touch in making him that little more accurate. And you can see here from a bird's eye perspective, very nice looking sculpt work going on. But of course, if you weren't a fan of Earthrise Starscream, then you're not going to be a fan of this, as he still has got this really ugly gaping gap here, which you can just poke your finger through. Of course, we've got some undercarriage kibble, which truth be told, for a figure of which was originally supposed to be a Voyager, I actually don't think looks too bad. He does in fact actually conceal pretty nicely. And here, for a very quick comparison, let's just bring in that original Earthrise release. So you can see once again, in terms of sculpt, exactly the same, but in terms of paint, it really is just these gunmetal areas which differ, and of course the back wings that differ as well. So some final thoughts here for this Transformers Studio Series 86 Leader Class Coronation Starscream. Overall, it's an alright figure. To be fair, if you already own the original Earthrise version and you're not all that keen on the entire Coronation getup, then truth be told, you can actually skip this. There really isn't anything new here that you will really need to add to your collection unless you're a massive fan of articulated fingers. The actual base Starscream himself is completely untouched. Honestly, they've not modified anything in terms of moulding, and to be fair, I do in fact actually find some of the paint apps to be superior on the original Earthrise release to this Coronation version. Most noticeably would be the vibrancy in terms of the silver and of course the red, and if I'm being honest with you, I've never really actually been a huge fan of that Earthrise Starscream. It was already originally based on a very old classic figure, and to be fair, I really do think Hasbro and Takara can do so much better in terms of engineering. So if this guy was a complete brand new sculpt, then I would have been easily able to recommend it, but just seeing as they just reissued that Earthrise version. Once again, it was already a nail in the coffin before I even actually got this guy in hand. I do find some of the accessories to be pretty cool though. All of the coronation gear is really well done, in particular would be the cape. I think the crown looks pretty awesome, and the shoulder pads are also really nice. I like the hinge joints that we've got going on for those so that it doesn't compromise the actual articulation of the main shoulder, and the addition of the new modified null rays are also a really nice touch. But the main event for me is that brand new Decepticon throne. That looks really impressive. The sculpt work is very nicely done. The shade of purple it's been cast out of too is really awesome, and it's something that I hope that we can in fact actually see going forward for future mainline releases, as it would be awesome to get some more almost to scale props for some of our Transformers. Perhaps we can in fact see an almost revised version of Teletran 1, just as the version that came with the Arc was a little small to in fact actually scale with the likes of Leader, Voyager and Deluxe. But with all that being said, I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I'd love to know down in the comment section below on whether or not you guys share my thoughts on this figure. Do you think that perhaps I'm being too harsh, or is this in fact something that you're really looking forward to actually picking up? Of course, also be sure to let me know what you thought of the review, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.